Oh, someone always takes so long to load here. And it's Jonsnow versus Stun, guys. PVZ coming up. It's kind of interesting. The top half of the brackets, I did not see these. We did them through random draws, and top half of the bracket ended up being like all PVT through coincidence of games. The bottom half appears to be all PVZ by the coincidence of games. So Puck, of course, waiting in the finals, will either be fighting against one of these two, depending on who can take it. This is the semifinals B of the Love Your Girlfriend 8-man Invitational. Ladies and gentlemen, there's $100 up for grabs, paid for in full by Love Your Girlfriend before the tournament even began. So do not worry, these players will be paid out today upon completion of the tournament. And of course, big shout outs to Love Your Girlfriend before we get too far into this match, before we get started. I know I'm talking a lot about them because they deserve to be talked about. These are people who have been under scrutiny by the Reddit community, and I gotta say, Reddit community, shame on you, because it's just some really nice people. And they've done a great job of helping put together an event for you guys to watch here on this Saturday. But for now, spawning in the top left corner of the map, from the team Love Your Girlfriend, it's going to be the Protons player Stun. Don't I have game sense on? Why didn't you hear that? Okay, whatever. Anyways, his opponent in the lower right from Core Gaming, perhaps one of the better up-and-comers when it comes to North America, the Pink Zerg player from Core Gaming, Jonsnow. Of course, I have been a fan of Jonsnow ever since I first encountered upon him in, was it StarCraft Ascension, I think, back in the almost, I don't know if I had run into Jonsnow, whether it was the end of Wings of Liberty or whether it was at the start of HOTS. Either way, this was a guy who quickly caught my eye. Mostly because of his name, if I'm going to be completely honest. It was kind of funny. We had some jokes. I did like an introduction for him that was just the Game of Thrones music in a match he played versus, I think, like Idra or something a long time ago. But he was someone who was like, wow, this guy's actually good. He's not just a funny name. And he's had a lot to prove, and he's done quite well through WCS. It's been a great platform for him to try and display his skill. And we'll see how he does against Stun. Again, another one of the lesser-known Love Your Girlfriend players, but officially the last and only standing Love Your Girlfriend player in the tournament. So Puck, having knocked out two of them, has secured his spot in the finals. Stun, worth noting, guys, did beat Select in the first round today in a best-of-3 to get here to the semifinals. Again, with an 8-man invitational, you've got a bit of a smaller tournament with a more confined bracket system, but it gives us more control over the games and the players, and it was what Love Your Girlfriend wanted, so it works out for us in the end. But Jonsnow's open up here pretty standard. Nothing cheeky or cheesy coming out of him. Gotta give a small prop and nod to, of course, the fallen teammate Motok, who just finished playing the other semifinals brackets versus Puck. He had some pretty good plays and some really cool strategies that I would have really liked to have seen make it a little further in the game, but we'll see if Stun is going to play it pretty standard or not versus Jonsnow, or whether Jonsnow is going to be that guy who whips out Swarm Hosts, and we just call him a dick for doing so. Of course, the PVZ matchup is probably the one under the most scrutiny right now. People complain a lot about mech, people complain about Swarm Hosts in general, but PVZ can be one of the longest drawn out ones. Now, Daedalus Point is a map with a lot of bases on it, sure, and it's a map that looks a lot bigger than it is, but it's because it's wider than it is tall. So it's actually got a really small rush distance and a lot of wide open engagement areas. So for a player like Jonsnow, who's Zerg, a short rush distance for reinforcements combined with wide open engagement areas is kind of his perfect scenario for taking fights. We'll see if Stun can really deal with this. Of course, Daedalus Point was picked first here. There was a map veto system, so Stun absolutely hated this map. He could have vetoed it. Of course, the map has been improved in recent days. The original version of this map, and it was only tweaked like within the last week. The original version of this map, of course, had this part as a giant wide open ramp. It was just terrible and impossible for players to deal with. And it was encouraging really poor play, and we saw it through a lot of like Pro League and Korean games where you just see players like doing the cannon chokes at the bottom of the ramp because what else could they do? It was kind of funny too. There's like Protoss players tweeting about like saying it's how ridiculous it was. You had to like literally 4-gate to take your own natural, things like that. But Stun, I didn't realize he lost his probe on the other side of the map. My bad, I missed first blood, but hey, that's Rifkin for you. Anyways, the Stargate could open up here. I want to say Phoenixes. I like watching Phoenixes so much more than anything else. But Oracle is not a bad opener nowadays. People have kind of learned recently that, oh hey, an Oracle can kill a Queen and still have enough energy to kill like 3 or 4 drones behind it. So not a bad investment if that's the route he takes. A big part of the reason I really like Phoenixes though is not only do they require a higher level of play to maintain and control properly, so it's a lot more impressive to watch. Like, you'll know a good player from a bad player depending on their Phoenix control, but it forces Jonsnow to take openings that lead more into Stun's favor. So, for example, Jonsnow might be a player who loves to just go Swarm Host. Well, if you open Swarm Host versus Phoenixes, I'm forgetting all sorts of names here, he's going to have a bad time because Phoenixes can Graviton Beam the Swarm Host out of the ground, you get an Observer out or the Oracle with it, and they can kill it in the air. There's not a lot that Jonsnow will be able to do with it, so he'll be forced to go for like Hydralisk. Alternatively, so Jonsnow may have been a player who wanted to go for, like, let's say Mutalisks. If he does that, then it's suicide against a player who opens against Phoenixes. So I'm liking this opening a lot more out of Stun. Now, unfortunately, for both players, this is kind of a predictable opening. When you go for Phoenixes, Jonsnow's absolutely going to get Roaches and Hydralisks behind this, which means Stun is going to have to make Colossus, which means Jonsnow is going to either get a ton of Corruptors or, more likely, Vipers behind it. And I gotta say, Vipers just seem to trump anything that a Protoss player can throw at them. I mean, you're supposed to get Templar to feed back them on the front grounds. You'll have Phoenixes to zone them out, but realistically, a lot of the time, the Vipers come in, and it's just kind of like, surprise, got your Colossus! And then it's dead, and a whole muck of units. But we'll see how this one plays out. Jonsnow is going for the Roaches and Hydralisks for the time being. He's getting those ranged weapon upgrades too. We'll see what his Element X ends up being, but some Zealots warped up here towards the north from Stun, a couple walking across the map. 7 is the magic number to tear down a third if you're hitting earlier than this. But because this is coming so late, Roaches will be out to defend as well as some Hydralisks. Granted, low amounts, but they'll still be here to defend instead of the free Zerglings that the Zealots usually claim. Now, it's worth noting, too, these Phoenixes haven't been going out of their way to harass too much. A big part of this, of course, with the Spore Crawlers in the Mineral Lines, it's going to deter quite a bit. But more importantly, Stun's saving the energy on these for, like, an actual fight. Like, he knows there's going to be Hydralisks out at some point, and he's going to want to Graviton Beam those over, say, Zerglings any day of the week. But trying to keep scouting information to a minimal. Coming out with this fight, there's Roaches in the Mineral Lines already. These Zealots are going to be very hard-pressed to get a lot of damage done. Picks up the Queen, not to a lot of avail, I fear. And a Time Warp will go down to allow these Zealots to connect to these units. Now, he is doing a ton of damage, and the Roaches and the Hydras are being kind of Graviton beamed more for crowd control than actual damage. But still, with the Hydras now popping out, if there was one more Phoenix here, he could one-shot them. For those who don't know, it takes 1 volley from 5 Phoenixes in total. Well, 1 has to lift up, so 4 Phoenixes in total. Zealots are still doing a ton of damage underneath this. 9 drones have died, but this base will stand at the end of the day, which is really what's key. Hydras are going to drive this back, and as we see, Zealots just can't do much about this. Even on creep, they're running for their lives, but Hydralisk in hot pursuit. I'm really curious why Stun did not veto this map. I'm wondering if that was a mistake on his part, because whether it's Lings, whether it's Roaches, whether it's Hydralisks, this is a situation where this wide ramp is going to be very difficult to defend. He's got some Phoenixes out, granted, and a Void Ray is on the way, but he's going to be hard-pressed to deal with Hydralisks. Force Fields may try and lock some of this in, but he doesn't have a lot of damage behind this. Backing over Jonsnow, though, he's on 60 workers comfortably mining. He's already made up the losses that he took from that initial harass. Hasn't cleared up the pylon, so that could come into effect later on. But yeah, 8 Hydralisks are on the way. It's going to be so hard with gateway units, like, even with sentries. Sentries are probably the closest you're going to ever come to countering a gateway unit. Or sorry, a Hydralisk, rather, from a gateway. Zealots don't really fare too well. Blink Stalkers, the perfect micro, can sometimes deal with armies like this, but that could be easy, is the bottom line there. Now, we do have the Hydra Tech finishing up. An Infestation Pit is on the way. And quite frankly, a lot of you might be cringing saying, oh god, here come the Swarm Hosts. And it may just be Swarm Hosts, but I'm thinking this is going to be for that earlier Hive. Given the fact that he's been able to kind of relax on 3 bases and hasn't been harassed, going for that higher tech would absolutely pay off. In fact, coming here a little bit aggressive, going to poke into this base, take out the pylon initially. Oh, the probe transfer, a little preemptive. This could cost him a lot of probes combined with this army fight. Colossus are doing what they can, and the force fields have gone down, but I don't think that'll be enough to stop this. Not before these probes get destroyed. Stun, getting a little bit... Oh man, eyes too big for his stomach, I think comes as a saying that I want to say here, because unfortunately he loses every single probe there. Cannon's going to go down. Will he be able to get the Forge before it finishes its upgrade? It's going to be darn close. Can he deny the armor upgrade? Looks like he will, unfortunately. Now this allows him to get a little more closer to the Colossus. Again, he's got to chew through these Zealots first. You can't just move on top of the Colossus like he wants to, but still the one Colossus goes down. The Zealots are not doing the job of keeping the army back. Good game is going to be called. Jonsnow ladies and gentlemen, we'll take game 1 in this best